Thank you for having me, Dale. So Try Not to Breathe is a story of a girl, Amy, who as a teenager made decisions which led her into a very unfortunate situation without giving too much away. And she was found as good as dead a couple of days after going missing and never recovered. She is still 15 years later in a permanent vegetative state, seemingly uncommunicative in a local hospital. And she's stumbled upon, almost literally, by a journalist who's the same age, grew up relatively close by, and has had some challenges of her own. A journalist called Alex Dale, who then can't get Amy out of her head, and it becomes almost an obsession that she has to find out what happened to Amy. And along the way, we find out more about Amy's life and the people who were left behind when she didn't exactly go, but isn't exactly still here. It started with Amy. So it started with, or even before I had that character, it started with the idea of somebody who, for a very long time, was shut away and almost forgotten. And basically, I was listening to a radio show about patients who are in long-term comas. And I was listening to the interviews with their doctors and loved ones, and hearing how they couldn't grieve because the patient was still alive, but they were gone. They had everything about their life had gone apart from literally their life. And it was so heartbreaking, and it got me thinking about somebody in that situation who had been in the absolute prime of their life, who had their whole life ahead of them, all those cliches, and was cut down, and how everybody around them would deal with that, and or not, as the case may be, and the effects that would have, while this person was still there but completely unaware of what had happened to, the life slowly being dismantled around her. And from there, I started to think about, why would somebody in the prime of their life being cut down? And that's where the idea of, obviously, the dark thing, obviously without giving anything away, came from. And from there, the other characters started to sort of fit in around the storyline. Oh, I've had so many. I've had so many ideas that have ranged from just an idea to a hard attempt, a more serious attempt that hasn't been finished. So this is the first full-length manuscript that I actually finished. But this was not my first rodeo. I've been writing fiction longer than I've been writing nonfiction. I mean, I think as kids, everybody writes little stories, even if it shouldn't to anybody. I think it's just in our nature to write stories. But that was something that never left me. So I was always, if not determined to have a book published, because that's like wanting to be an astronaut. That's such an amazing sort of idea. But I certainly at least wanted to finish something. And this was the first time that really I had an actual story rather than just the idea. And I had an actual idea of who did it, who everybody was. And I really wanted to see it through. I wanted to know what happened. I felt really invested in the characters. So it wasn't just about finishing a book so I could say I'd finished a book. You know, it wasn't a New Year's resolution. I really wanted to know what happened to the characters, and I really wanted to do right by them. So this was the first time I actually, fully stuck with it. It's so hard to say because a lot of I read widely, so I certainly don't just read from the genre that I write in, and I think that actually, when I think about who's had the most impact on me as a writer, it's had the most impact on me as a reader, which was when I was a kid, probably Roald Dahl. Like knowing watching somebody be so playful with language, and that's not the way that's not the way that I write. My book is obviously nothing like Roald Dahl's writing, but seeing what fun could be had with language and how playful could be with a reader, and how you could kind of have a secret that you included the reader in, and play with that. I think that kids' books do that so well, and I think that what I read as a child, and I read a lot of awful, ghost stories. I was really drawn to that kind of terrible stuff that I lied about reading and then would have nightmares and all that stuff that we do. So I read ghost stories and things like The Ghost of Thomas Kemp. That was really big. And I read everybody at my school was obsessed with Flowers in the Attic. I don't know if you remember that book, which again is and secrets. All of that, I think, when you're a young reader, it shows you what's possible as a writer, and maybe some of that darkness didn't leave. Maybe it's some of the Flowers in the Attic stuff stayed. That's so difficult. I'm going to say Peter Carey, the Australian writer, who wrote a book, was written many books, but wrote a book called Illywacker, which I read when I was a teenager, which is incredibly, and again, actually very playful. It's a real unreliable narrator, and it's just fantastic. Really, just really kind of guttural writing. Loved it. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, yes, more than a time or two. And by the way, I have to say, it's a great book. Girl on the Train is a great book. It's not a bad book to be compared to, but it also has some questions. Mm, yeah. Mm. So Alex is a hot mess, and I think you're right. She doesn't know. She she rightly knows that she's made an awful lot of mistakes and that she's messed a lot of things up, and she's lost a lot of relationships and a lot of her reputation has been damaged. But she is an unreliable narrator to herself. She has foggy memories and, obviously remembers the worst situations. And I mean, I can understand why somebody would assume that they'd really messed up on every level if they couldn't remember not messing up. But she's also, I feel very, very sorry for her because she's not a bad person. She's made mistakes and she's been let down, and she maybe doesn't have the support network that a lot of people do have, and that I think Amy, my victim, did have. Amy had a loving family, whereas Alex had not the best mum, and her dad wasn't on the scene, so she didn't have that same experience that Amy had. And I think that Alex is quite, she maybe didn't have the best examples set to her. And as soon as one thing started to go wrong, it all collapsed pretty quickly, and there wasn't anybody there to pick up the pieces. But she's a clever woman, and she's a driven woman, and she's tenacious, and she's a fighter, but she's also, I think she's kind. Much as she wanted to solve the mystery, it's not just about that. She actually wants to get some justice, and she wants some redemption for herself, and also some closure for Amy. So she's not a bad person. Yeah. I think the truth is that all of us are have the potential to be a Fiona. So in other words, Fiona, and I don't mean all women, I mean all people. Fiona has had years of the man she loves not quite being honest with her. And in that gap between truth and reality, she's filled it with all sorts of guesswork and worries. And as you would, he's not done anything visibly bad enough to actually force her hand. He's not said, I'm having an affair. He's not been caught with his pants down. But she can't fully trust in him, and she can't fully understand him. And I think that to live with that would drive you a little bit potty. So, and I also think that if that's your kind of base level in the relationship, then lots of small straws will break daily camel's backs. And I think that that's where Fiona comes from. And I wanted to, again, without giving anything away, I wanted to make it clear, and I hope make it clear that she's not just crackers, she's not just hormonal, she is acting a certain way after years of the same confusion within her marriage. Yeah, I think he does understand, but is on a one-way track. I also think that a lot of these characters' behaviours are set as teenagers. So something happens when Jake and Amy and their friends are 15, and in some way it kind of keeps them, or part of them at that age, it keeps them bewildered, and it keeps them unable to mature emotionally. And I think that for Jake, he's just so affected by what happened and by his sense of obligation, that it doesn't matter that he knows he's messing up. He can't stop himself because it's what he's done since he was a teenager. Yeah, I mean that's that's completely me. It is, but thinking about it dispassionately, it's also what you're obsessed with as a teenager, or what many, many, many teenagers were obsessed with. I think that as a teenager, you don't have a job yet, you don't have many sort of official stamps of your personality, of who you are, and the bands that you like can go some way to representing the person that you feel you are, the person that you want to be. And the music that you listen to can often articulate feelings that as a teenager you can't really articulate, you can't really get your head around. And I think that it's so, so important to teenagers, and certainly back then in the 90s. I mean, my God, in England we had 4 channels on TV. Like, wasn't much else. We had the internet. So music was so important. And so it would have been important to Amy. And it just made sense to me. There's not a lot of her that's borrowed from me, but that was borrowed from me entirely. Well, it was pulp. It was pulp and it was Blur. But I was a bit nerdier about music than Amy. So I was sort of listening to a lot of my mum's records from the 60s and 70s a lot more than I was maybe listening to the bands of the time. But yeah, I was a pulp girl. I wasn't, and a Blur girl. I wasn't an Oasis girl. That was very important. Thank you. Mm. Yeah, so it came out. So I'm based in Amsterdam now, and which obviously makes things a little bit different. But it came out in the UK in January, and and it also came out in the Netherlands in January. So I've been doing some promotion, mostly speaking to journalists, doing loads of work with book bloggers who would just amaze me. The amount that they read, if nothing else, just sheer appetite is just incredible, and not just the amount that they read, but their ability to really understand what authors are going for, and their ability to really get under the skin of a book. They're not just reading really, really fast. They're reading and understanding and talking about and infusing and getting everybody else excited. So they're amazing. So I'm really happy to sort of been having a glimpse into their world. But in terms of the book in America, it came out last week, and there's been some fantastic pushes by retailers, which is brilliant. And I believe Random House have done quite a lot of promotions, and there's quite a few competitions running, and I'm speaking with people, and yeah, it's fantastic, and there's been some really good reviews, which is, I mean, as an author, it's lovely to get good reviews, but it's also the whole review thing just terrifying. So as much as it's great, I kind of look through my fingers a little bit. Yeah. I think it's a level playing field, which makes it hard to see who the really good players are. And I think that I've read some reviews, not just of my. I honestly don't sit there just reading my reviews of my own book, but I've read some reviews by so-called amateurs that are just beautiful. They're not just good reviews; they're absolutely beautiful. I've read some reviews that are. Um, that maybe contain some assumptions that are just way off. And also, but I think it's really difficult as well for that I didn't know until I actually had the book published what was involved in having a book published. I didn't know how long it took. I didn't know all the different sort of milestones along the way. So I can't really be cross that readers and reviewers don't know, but it does get a little bit frustrating. I saw one person had said, "Oh, it's a shame that she obviously saw the girl on the train had done really well, and then wrote something with an alcoholic alcoholic character. And I thought, oh my God, is that how fast you think I can write a book and get it out? But it's not. It's not. Well, exactly, exactly. If only it was that quick. I'm currently working on the first draft of my second suspense novel, and I'm about halfway through. And it's completely standalone. It's not the same. It's not the same characters, but again, it's set in England, different part. Actually, it's Manchester this time, um, and there's music. It's not, yeah, without giving too much away. It's not set in the same time period. It's completely the present day is completely contemporary, whereas Try Not to Breathe was mostly 2010, whereas now it's bang up to date. Which by the time it's published, obviously won't be exactly up to date, but yeah, it's going okay. It's going. I wish it was going quicker, but I'd rather get it right. So we're getting there. There are so many funny ones. When I finally said on Facebook that I'd got a book deal, I waited until I actually had the contract to sign before I said it because I was so nervous that they'd say no, it was just a joke. Somebody said, "Oh, so do you have to write a book now?" And I thought, oh my God, they think I've just, I've got a deal to write a book just on the strength of, I don't even know what. So there's a few sort of strange ones like that, or people can be maybe a little bit armchair experts and they really don't know. And yeah, people think if it's already been written, it should come out within about two months because why not? You know, you've got it. You just press print. So there's a few assumptions more about the yeah the uh, publishing a book. Which, to be fair, there's a lot I didn't know until I actually did it. I would absolutely love to come over there. There's nothing on the calendar at the moment, but I've told everybody in every country that the book's coming out. I'm so happy to come over. So, um, I really am. I'd love to. I love traveling, but no, nothing on paper yet. But I would love to. Thank you, Dale. That's really, really lovely to hear. I hope so. So my website is hollyseddon.com, and I'm also on Twitter. I'm just at Holly Seddon, and you can buy the book from to my sales pitch. You can buy the book from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the great bookshops and independent books as well. Oh, thank you. It's been lovely. Brilliant. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to reading. I don't know, but I'm just typing my email address in just in case. I'm just putting it in the chat. Thank you. Yeah, I just have to say, actually, it did start to, it got a little bit difficult to hear some of your questions. It started cutting out. So I'm really sorry if I answered the wrong, if I, I guessed a little bit.